Young farmers. Brilliant. Hey. Young farmers morning.
They're all like the teachers one in the weekend.
Awesome, very good. So here we are.
Right.
Welcome again, Lynda.
Thank you.
Cutz and Kōrero. Here we are this time live at Field Days. First time here, I was just telling you. Amazing event. Incredible to see the rural community at its like best, really. And it's an enormous industry. It's probably the big thing that's knocked my socks off.
It's huge.
Just understanding, you know, like I'm a city guy, so I don't really get out and see it. So that's great.
Yeah.
Lynda, you're from Young Farmers,
Yes.
New Zealand, you're CEO. Anybody on there that can see? We've got a bunch of young farmers just turned up, might not be able to see them.
They're the young farmers.
Young farmers.
They're the teenage young farmers.
Yeah, great. And we'll chat about that. I've got a couple of important questions first though. The first one, I know we've talked about this, but we're talking about maybe a bit of a breakout haircut.
We are.
So maybe we're going to take a little bit more off the bottom, shape it a bit so it's a bit more modern lobby kind of style, keep a bit of layers, all the right lingo.
Frame the face.
Second most important question, Sunday roast. Lamb, hogget, mutton, or something else?
Lamb.
Lamb, there you go, we've got an official poll happening over here.
Always lamb. Always lamb.
Always lamb.
Slow cooked on a Weber.
Slow cooked on a Weber, there you go.
Greek style.
How long slow cooked for?
Probably about 3 or 4 hours.
It's alright.
Turn it right down and just like leave it in the Weber.
Nice, I like it.
Put your lemon zest, garlic, olive oil, a few oregano, and just let it sort of, and then make a gravy out of it.
Stop that, you've just eaten my heaven. That's great. Just on the poll, you can see lamb is clearly ahead.
Lamb's very ahead, yes.
A couple of hoggets, a couple of muttons. It's good to see the mutton
I
get
don't mind a
there.
bit of hogget, but mutton.
Yeah, a bit of an acquired taste.
Yeah.
And then we got a few beef, a bit of chicken, of course.
Yeah.
But then a couple of interesting ones. Wild game, 2 people for wild game, the WG.
yeah.
And the W, 1 for wallaby. Anyway, there you go, the live poll from Field Days. Brilliant. Anyway, let's get into this.
Yeah.
So, just tell us, like, you know, young farmers, the group here, go for it.
So, so we haven't got a stand here this year. We decided not to have a stand, but we took the opportunity with the Field Days team to bring in our grand finalists for the year. So there's 7 grand finalists, so we're getting to the pointy end of Young Farmer of the Year. And these guys are amazing. They're very, you'll actually see them this afternoon because they're coming here for a haircut.
Yep.
So these guys are the creme de la creme of young people working in the farming sector.
So when you say 7, are they split up regionally?
Regionally, so there's 7 regions. So we have, so the season is actually 22 events, and it starts in October. So we only have a 3-month downtime. And in October we run our district finals, which is 2 or 3 events per region. And then we get our regional finalists from that. So we have 8 regional finalists. And so then between February and April, we run our 7 regional finals all around the country. And that's like a practical day and then an evening show event. So if you're old enough to have watched it on TV when you were young,
the
quiz, that's what we do in each region, the quiz, And then out of that, we end up with our 7 grand finalists. And so that finishes in April, and they've got until July to prepare. And so they study hard, and they upskill in all their things like fencing, chainsaw carving, just everything.
Gotcha.
And then,
so do they all have to do everything? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So grand final is a 3-day event really, because they do a technical day where they do a whole lot of like innovation projects and exams and your real sort of behind closed door technical stuff. Then they have a practical day on Friday, which is basically an expanded version of what you'll see today. That, like the whole day of modules and practical events and things like that. And then on Friday Friday night they do a speech, so they have judges, and they have to do like almost like prepare a speech about a topic that they're passionate about. Then on Saturday night we have grand final dinner, which is 750 people. Lots of VIPs, lots of ministers and stuff come to that, and we do the final quiz. So that's 6 rounds, and it's pretty intense what they do.
It's quite a commitment.
It's
for
a
the
massive
young people,
commitment,
eh?
yeah. It's a massive commitment.
So what age group are we talking about for that?
18 to 31.
18 to 31.
Yeah. Although we did have a guy in our Waikato Bay of Plenty regional final who was 17 this year, because you can actually enter. Even if you're over 16, you can enter, but generally it's always 18 to 31. And he came third, I think. He was really good.
I mean, obviously these people are like employed or got their own businesses or whatever it might be often.
Yep.
And then they're into this as well. Busy people.
Yeah, they are. Well, I mean, we've got...
And committed.
Very committed. They've all got day jobs. If they're not farmers, they tend to be rural professionals. So this year we've got 2 people who work for Dairy NZ. And they're kind of, I think, extensions and sides team. And then we've got one of our contestants, Jay. He's with ANZ as a rural banker. But then we have 2 or 3 that are actually on farm. So we're a dairy farmer, sheep, beef farmer, that kind of thing. So we get a real mix. But the really cool thing is this age group we've got here on the stand now, the teenagers, so they're the 13 to 18-year-olds, they have their own section as well, which is FNG Junior Young Farmer. And that's fiercely competitive.
Hey, with these kids here, would they be locals or have a few of them come from around the place?
I'd say most of these ones will be Waikato based.
Yep.
They will have come in, because Friday's a school day. They usually have the day off on a Friday and they come in.
You don't.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we'll get a lot of kids here on Friday.
Yeah, I have. Which is great. And that's, I mean, and here you are right at the heart of it. But, once again, like as an industry, rural life as an industry, really impressive that you kind of, nurturing from these kinds of ages. So maybe like outside of the competition, how would you describe that? Like, getting people involved here and...
Yeah, well, a lot of it's just about connecting them and then nurturing them. Because particularly the urban kids don't know what they don't know. A lot of them have never even been on a farm.
Yeah, that's right.
They wouldn't even know how big a cow was.
Yeah.
I mean, we've actually got a dairy farm in Whitford, in Auckland, and we're setting it up as a full kind of like educational connections point, so where we can bring school groups and we can bring in particularly from South Auckland, where you've got sometimes a lower socioeconomic and looking for opportunities for careers where they might want to be outside and not necessarily working in town.
Yes.
So it's about creating that connection. I mean, if you've ever spent half an hour in a paddock with a bunch of Jersey calves, you want to go farming because they're so cute. They have these big brown eyes, they nuzzle up to you and they want to cuddle, they're so cute. So, for this age group, it's about maintaining that connection. So if they love the sector and they're interested in it, how do we make sure they stay and they come and work in it and they milk cows? Because we need them. We need them desperately. We really do.
I had a really interesting, there was a couple of young women that came through yesterday and I thought of you. I actually asked both of them if they both, belong to, they were both like 18, 19, if they belong to young farmers. So real interesting. The reason I bring them up was one was a young woman who came from up north, and she grew up on a farm. She now was doing basically an apprenticeship of sorts on another dairy farm, had all the aspirations to take over her father's farm, and she was really impressive, really clued up, had ideas for the future, had a great chat with her. And the other young woman was in some ways almost the polar opposite. She'd grown up low socioeconomic, in town, there's no farming in her background, but just like you explained, had gotten introduced to it around kind of 16, 17, loved being outdoor, and so was now doing a course, but asking who through. And was just like, I just look forward to a future working outdoors on a farm. And it was as simple as that. Like I kind of was real interested, one was very kind of like, I'm going to own a farm and do this, and the other one was like, I just like doing it, like I'm going to be part of it. I just thought, that's such a diversity of kind of like just 2 people right there, same age, young woman, looking to get into the industry in different ways.
Exactly, and I think that one of the biggest challenges we have getting people to want to go on farm is that they think they have to own a farm to have a career in farming, and yet there is so much you can do in the industry without actually having to own a farm. You can be a professional dairy farmer. You can go work for one of the corporate farming organisations like Pamu, or there's a couple of others down at South Island, I can't remember their names. But you can be earning, 150 grand a year if you're you're overseeing 3 or 4 farms. Our chair, Ashley Campbell, she's been a farm systems manager for Naitaku farming down in Christchurch, and been overseeing 8 farms, 8 big dairy farms. She's super smart, so she's been Dairy Woman of the Year. She does a lot of stuff with Dairy NZ. She's been our chair. She's just about to step down. She's now gone into her first share milking role, where she's kind of like just starting to get some skin in the game with the sector. But she's really pragmatic about the fact she may never own a farm, but there's so much opportunity for her to do different things and own her own business and increase her capital and, just generally do something she loves. Which is farming.
And what about other, we've talked about, that thing of connection.
Yes.
And maybe it's more important for younger people these days. But you guys play a bit of a role in that too, don't you? That farming can be in some ways a bit isolating at times.
Yeah, we have. That's a big part. And it's interesting because I was talking to someone about this morning from Farmstrong, that our clubs have often quite different profiles. So a club that's in the deepest, darkest depths of Southland, like Clinton, for example, is a really good club of ours. Very social. It's all about reducing our isolation. It's about making friends, meeting a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whatever you want to do. And that serves a really good purpose in that place. But then you look at some of our city clubs, like Hamilton City or Auckland City in particular, they're all about networking. There's definitely a social aspect, but they do a lot of that networking, and a lot of them are rural professionals. They come from a farming background, want to maintain that connection. So you can have different kind of club profiles depending on what the need is for the area. There's no one club, every club has its own different sort of character and culture. And so definitely those remote rural communities, that social connection and being connected to their community is critical.
Well, and I remember you saying last time we chatted about, people that do meet their future husbands and wives there. It's almost like a club.
I actually would love to do a book on telling the stories of people who met their partners and spouses at Young Farmers.
The Young Farmers love stories.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Love that.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Hey, so can I ask you a couple of questions that maybe relate into where we are? Obviously we're here with the EPA, Environmental Protection Authority.
Yes.
And some of the stuff that we've been asking for them, and we probably even spoke about this a bit last time, but like in terms of environmental protection, like those words, where does that kind of fit into what you guys are doing, or even if not yourself so much, the wider industry as so forth?
Yeah, I think that, so we've talked a little bit about this with EPA. It's, oftentimes what challenges farmers, I think, particularly with environmental regulations, is understanding the why. Why do I have to do this? I haven't had to do it before. Why am I having to do it now? It's a hassle. I'm busy, that kind of stuff. So it's organisations like ours, I think, that can help tell the story and communicate that out to the farmers.
Just leave it, because it's obviously...
Get them understanding in a really simple way, this is why we have to do this, and why it's important, and why it's about the future of farming. And so if we can kind of help get that connection made at a younger age, then it's going to be easier to maintain the compliance and all that sort of boring stuff, because it's actually just a given. We make it it's just the reality of farming, rather than it's just something they're making me do to make my life hard.
Yep, totally. And fascinating yesterday, that young woman I was talking about in particular, that had the aspirations for the farm. When I asked her a question about what she'd love the future of her land to look like, it was everything that we kind of, and I thought about that whole generational thing as well. There must be a, younger generation coming through that are like approaching it with very different principles.
Definitely.
In the very first place,
Yeah, and that's why we've just developed the future, the Food and Fibre Youth Council. So we've developed that on behalf of MPI. And so we've got 9 young people representing horticulture, seafood, dairy, sheep and beef, agri-tech, agribusiness, that's everyone, across 9 different people. And they are sort of at the top of a network of young people, so they're connected into a big network. And their focus is, what are the priorities for future farmers? And how do we make sure that government and the sector understands what we are visualising for the future for our sector and what we think we need to be moving forward. Because it's often quite different to what people who are already here and a little older like me see it as. A lot of these young people coming through, they're really into social equity now.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all about, how do we feed our own people in our own country, and how do we, do things in a way that is like employment, looking after people, making sure we're not taking the piss, you know what I mean? We need to look after our people. So...
Yeah, changing name.
Yeah.
Really fair. And, that's outside of whether it's rural or not. I just think it's a fact of life that we're all living with at the moment is, that young people are thinking differently and approaching things differently as they come through. Yeah, interesting stuff. Hey, what about, what would you like, thinking a little bit with a lens into the future? And I've been asking people probably a bit more in relation to land when I ask this question, whether it's land they're on or the country. But I think I'm going to ask this question in terms of the industry. What would you love the rural kind of industry, if I can put it that way, to look like in, say, 30 years' time?
Wow, that's a big question.
Big question. You have a moment to think about it.
I guess for me, a lot of it's about that sustainable, I know it's kind of an overused word, but it's about almost the industry being at one with the land and, taking a holistic approach so when you look at how we measure success for farming now, and, largely historically it's been about profit, how do I make a living and have as good a living as possible? I would like to think that we have a much more balanced view of what success looks like in the future. So, success looks like that we are treating our staff pretty well and having a good, strong supply of young people coming into the sector to work, and they're looked after and they enjoy it. So that's just as important as making money. And that's a hard mindset to shift. That whatever we're doing on the farm, how we're impacting the environment and the land is critical. So it's almost like having that triple bottom line, rather than it just being about profit. We are globally focused, but we are making sure that what we're doing on the ground, on farm, is achieving all of our objectives, not just making money. And I think we're moving in that direction, but that's what the young people are going to bring through into the sector.
Well, my next question was going to be around what do you think the challenges are, but in some ways you probably answered it there, and that changing mindset is probably the biggest thing, isn't it?
Well, I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with an ex-colleague of mine from Fonterra, because I used to work for Fonterra, and she's at the moment working with, they're looking to change their capital structure, which is how they manage all their shares, and I don't know how much you know about how Fonterra manages that, but...
A little bit.
Yeah, so, you have to buy one share per kg of milk solids that you supply and all this kind of stuff. So they're looking, because they're predicting that milk supply is going to level off, perhaps decline, because environmentally we can't really afford to have any more cows in New Zealand. So they're looking at how do we manage that capital structure so that we don't have a run on our capital, and it's easy for our farmer owners to own and manage their shares. And so what she was saying is the real challenge is some of the older farmers that have been shareholders for years and years and years are resisting the change because it's going to impact the money they make when they exit. So it's very short term. And these are the ones that are voting. So, how do they encourage the young shareholders to vote so that they can kind of counterbalance that a little bit and so for them the big challenge is getting everyone to vote on this proposal because otherwise they end up making decisions based on people that are exiting the sector. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That kind of brings to mind a little bit in some ways, what role does, thinking about here we are once again with EPA, you know, which I've learned, you know, in the time I've been here, it's the first time they've been at Field Days.
Yeah.
And here they are, to put their faith in me for a start, to be some sort of mouthpiece. What I'm driving at here is, what role does government have in all of this here? Not just the EPA, but government, you know, like...
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Paula from EPA and I talk about this a lot. It's about, I think, taking a different approach to compliance. You know, even what you're doing here, this kind of thing, it's just changing the whole perception of EPA. Like, who would have thought you'd go to the EPA stand for a haircut? You know what I mean? And that's clever.
Totally.
It's really clever.
And to be honest with you, I even recognise that there's probably a certain amount of risk around that there as well, you know, which is, you know, hats off to them that they've taken that risk, you know. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's taking innovative approaches to tell your story and giving people time to talk about stuff. Like, you know, if they had a regular stand here, just with a bunch of people standing around with some signs up about environment, no one would come and talk to them.
We were talking
They'd
about
run a
this
mile.
last night, totally. We were absolutely, my partner and I were talking about exactly all of this. Like, she's similar to me, she puts on, you know, kind of public art and you know, where we go out and engage, and it is about engaging public and so forth. And she spent, because she had, you know, she's worked a little bit around here, but she's been wandering around. Well, she went home with a blueprint of how to transform all the stands around here that don't do any interaction. You know, and you're 100% right. You know, due respect to these guys, but it's not if I wasn't here, but if they didn't have something like this,
really innovative and
a lot of people would be walking by.
And you're probably getting, like, in your recording all this, getting some really amazing insights from people about all of this stuff and giving them an opportunity to engage with EPA that otherwise they wouldn't even do. Like I say, they'd run a mile. They'd be like, I don't want to go there and talk about the environment because that's just a headache for me.
And also, you know, people, I mean, what the hell is the EPA?
Exactly.
You know, most people wouldn't even have a clue what that is. So yeah, I, you know, these guys in particular, I think, hats off.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So great, you know, like what you're saying. I mean, I totally agree. Government as a whole, getting out and engaging. You know?
And that's the reason why we get a lot of government organisations like WorkSafe and MPI wanting to engage with us with the contest, because it's a really fun way to engage with particularly young people, but also their friends and family, and show that they're genuine about kind of like doing good stuff for young people in New Zealand. It's walking the walk, not just talking the talk. You know, and it's a great way to engage with people. So it's about being a little bit innovative and not taking a one-size-fits-all approach to, you know, trying to engage with the right people.
Any particular favourites around here, or anything that you really love, or, you know, like anything that stands out each time? Is there something when you come you think, oh, I can't wait to see what, I don't know, the big machines or so? I don't know.
I don't look at the machinery. I don't even go to the machinery. That's not my thing. What I get excited about. Years ago, because I've been coming to Field Days for years ago, they used to have really amazing homewares.
Oh, did they?
Yep.
Really?
They still do have some.
Where's all of that?
It's out that way, but it's not as good. It used to be incredible. And if you were building a house or you're renovating, you come to Field Days and just get the most incredible array of all the stuff. You go and have a look at the outdoor fireplaces that they've got on display down this way.
Outdoor
Fireplaces. Oh my God, they're amazing. I want one for home.
Okay.
They're incredible.
Well, maybe if somebody cancels them, might be able to do that.
But yeah, exactly. What's my favourite part of Field Days? I love going into the meat producers and eating their food.
Oh yeah, we've already talked. No, I've already said lamb
chops.
Yeah.
That's what you want, lamb chops. Oh my God, they're amazing. I don't know. I think the thing I love most about field days is just all that opportunity to connect. Everyone's talking.
And what about the because there's obviously talks that go on and stuff like that there as well. Is that an important part?
Yeah. So
there's
what?
breakfasts and
Yeah. One of my favourites is to come in like we did on Thursday and go to the launch of the agribusiness agenda. So have you heard about that?
Is this this guy
Ian Proudfoot?
Yeah, a little bit actually. Yeah.
I really rate
Yeah,
him.
talk to me about that.
Yeah, so he's the global head of agribusiness for KPMG. So he's a bit of a big wig. And interestingly enough, just by the way, before COVID, he used to spend probably, I think, 220 days a year travelling overseas. And so I had a chat to him one time recently about the changes in his family dynamic from, being a man who was never home to all of a sudden always home. And he's loving it, I think. He's really enjoying it.
Nice.
But he spends a whole year. He's got a guy who works from Jack Key, who's actually one of our members, quite high profile. They put together this agribusiness agenda. So the great thing about what they do is they're not aligned to government, they're not aligned to anybody. They take a really objective view around what's going on globally, and then what's going on here in New Zealand, and what does that mean for what we need to be focused on going forward in terms of how we plan and what our strategy is and so on. And the thing I just love about it is he's just got so many great insights, and he's not afraid to just actually tell a bad story and make people feel uncomfortable, which he did this year.
Is that he did? Is that right?
Yeah. He's got real concerns that we in New Zealand we're congratulating ourselves, quite rightly so, because we've beaten COVID in New Zealand and we have a normal life. And for us, life's the same, pretty much, as it was, other than that we can't get on a plane and go travel somewhere.
Yep.
Like we're all this bloody field days.
Yeah, everybody's just wandering around.
Yeah. But he said the problem is that we're not appreciating that the rest of the world is moving forward in a different way, because they will never be the same again for a long time, if ever. Like we can't. It's hard for us in New Zealand to appreciate how much different the rest of the world is now. And the danger is that if we keep ourselves locked away, the longer we do it, the more disconnected we're going to become when we jump out there. We won't be it won't be as easy for us to connect. And so that was one aspect I thought was really interesting. And I can probably agree with that, because I went to Sydney a couple of weeks ago to see my son, and it blows me away when I'm in Sydney airport now, because I go to Sydney about 3 or 4 times a year, and it's normally this crazy busy, thousands of people, hundreds of flights, shops, beautiful big shops selling Gucci and bloody Armani and all that flash stuff, Coach. And you walk in there now and it's like tumbleweeds. And 2/3 of the restaurants are shut down. The shops are all boarded up. There's a big sign like Gucci, and there's just boards in front of the windows. And it's only when you're in there, coming from New Zealand, you get in there and you realise how the world's changed. It's actually quite confronting. It's like, shit, this is crazy. The world has changed. But we don't notice it, because we're just in our wee bubble of New Zealand doing what we do. And so I really think he's got a valid point that when do we start taking some risks and opening our borders more?
Yep.
And doing it in a safe way, but we can't lock ourselves away forever.
Yep.
And the other interesting thing he said, which I really appreciated or enjoyed, was that he talked about a lack of depth in leadership in New Zealand in our sector. Which is good for us. It's good for us as young farmers, because he was saying we've got to get more depth in our governance and leadership skills, because we just don't have it. And so to be able to lead us into this great future that is out there, if we want to take it in the sector, it's me. We have to be creating bigger depth in our leadership. So it's a highlight for me.
Hey, that actually goes off really nicely. Somebody that I know, I wonder if you know her actually. I know her really well from back in Wellington. A woman called Bridget Hawkins, and she started a business she's an agribusiness,
yeah.
And she started, it was an app called Regen.
I've heard of it.
And then she actually sold it last year, and
Yeah.
she's here. She's in the innovation tent,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there was an Israeli company that bought it.
Yes, I've heard
Forgive
of
me,
it.
I can't remember
I
the
know
name.
exactly who you're talking about.
Anyway, she was, because I know her well, I booked her in yesterday, so she came and had a little chat.
Yeah.
But her next thing so she's moving away from that in the next few months. And her next thing that she wants to get into, she's calling it Fields of Change. And it's basically she's wanting to promote, provide a platform where she wants to promote diversity of leadership in the industry. And of course, you know, being female, that's her kind of driver, but she's like, actually diversity is like much wider, and specifically at the leadership end of things.
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that was in Ian's report is he does like a survey of agribusiness leadership, right? All the leaders in the business. So we all answer it. And interestingly enough, the number one issue that the women leaders in the sector talked about was poor leadership in the sector. That was number 27 for the blokes.
Seriously?
Yep. And it really aligns, because I think for me, as someone who's a leader in the sector, who's focused on diversity and you know, trying to like make young farmers more diverse and inclusive and more collaborative approach. I think we're all about collaboration. I've got real concerns that we need to bring in some new leadership. That's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about the Youth Council, you know, because we're not getting enough of a diverse voice from, you know, young Māori, young Pacifica, women, the whole shebang.
Bingo. I should
Get in touch with me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'd love to talk to her.
Well, she'd love to talk to you as well, you know, like, you know, as a leader.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, that's exactly what she was talking about. And I've got to say, you know, she kind of put it pretty forthrightly when she was chatting to us yesterday. And she said, you know, and I thought, gosh, fair call. She said, you walk around. It's like right in front of your eyes, like, you know, we're the dominate, and you know, that it just breeds, it's like monocultures on the land, you know, it just breeds one way of doing things, and, you know, all the good things can't always get through and so forth. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Hey, I'm going to blow dry your hair and do all of that. I'm actually going to sign out of this thing.
Okay.
So anybody that was listening, don't even know if you could hear us. Thanks.
You won't hear us with the hairdryer going.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Lynda Coppersmith, Young Farmers, awesome work, Lynda. Thank you very much.
Well, this is going to be exciting.
Yeah.